Hey, what's up? Chris Sider here. Today we're going to be talking about the secret reasons that your ex really broke up with you. You know, the ones they're not going to tell you about. However, before we start talking about this really difficult topic, the first thing I recommend for everyone who's new to this process to do is to actually go to our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, and take a special quiz I put together there. The quiz is designed to tell you what kind of chance you have of getting your ex back. And also, once we tell you if you have a chance or not, and so that you know you're not wasting your time, it'll also put you in the right direction for how you should go about getting your ex back. You see, when you take the quiz, we run your answers through an advanced algorithm that spits out a range of what your chances are and if you should be trying this process or not. Usually, most of the time, people should be trying this process because you usually have a chance of getting your ex back. So if you want to take that special quiz, all you have to do is simply look in the description of this YouTube video if you're watching this on YouTube. If you're listening to this on a podcast or watching this on our website, all you have to do is simply go to our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, and click on the quiz button in the navigation bar. So with that in mind, let's begin.
All right, so let's talk about some of the secret reasons for why your ex really broke up with you. And I think I want to start this off by first saying most exes will not tell you the real reason they broke up with you. This has been my experience after doing this for 6.5 years. I am almost shocked at how lame some of the reasons that men and women will give when they actually break up with an individual. And I think there's a couple of reasons for why they will not tell you the real reasons. The first reason is probably the most common and kind of a no-brainer. They don't think that you can handle the real reason. People tend to have some pretty dark thoughts when they're thinking about canceling a relationship or ending a relationship, and they don't really want you privy to those dark thoughts. Of course, I'm going to tell you them and help you understand maybe some of the real reasons and show you the truth, hopefully. And sometimes the truth can be hard to grasp. So I think that's one of the reasons they won't tell you why they broke up with you, really. The second reason is I think people have this tendency to want to feel like heroes. We want to paint ourselves as good people. And sometimes when we're thinking thoughts that we know aren't going to make you feel good, or maybe that aren't socially acceptable, we will lose that hero criteria. And if we lose that hero criteria, all of a sudden our sense of self gets attacked, and we don't feel that we're sort of being true to who we are, even though ultimately some of the reasons that we're going to be covering here are going to be pretty dark. But first things first, let's talk about some of the common excuses that people will use when they want to break up with you. Now, as I go down this list, many of you probably will be sitting there and thinking, wait, that's my ex. My ex said that to me when he broke up with me or she broke up with me. And I'm not shocked because a lot of these reasons are things that I've gotten from our private Facebook group. If you don't know, anyone who buys a product from me or anyone who wants to get into the private Facebook group and pay to get in will go into our private Facebook group. We have close to around 2,000 people or 2,000 members in there, all people who are trying to get their exes back. And it's really interesting to get everyone together and hear them talk about some of the reasons for why their ex will break up with them. And these are the three most common ones or criteria or categories that I have found people talk about in the private Facebook group. So the first one is pretty self-explanatory. That's when your ex sits there and says, I still love you, but you're better off without me. This is the classic victim type thing. You know, I'm doing this for you. I don't want to go through this breakup because it's going to hurt you. Or I don't want to stay with you because I know for a fact I'm not good enough for you. And obviously, that's just total BS, and I'm sure you even tried to fight your ex on this if they said that to you. You're saying, no, I promise, you are good enough for me. We should be together. And they still just don't come down to it. And that's a pretty good precursor to maybe understanding that they're not being truthful with exactly the reason for why they broke up with you. The second thing I would say to look at is if your ex sits there and says, well, okay, we're going to take a break, but we'll get back together later. It's that classic slam the door in your face, end the relationship, but crack it open slightly to give you that false hope. And I see this really commonly among exes who really get a kick out of having that God complex where they need to have a man or a woman constantly helping or peppering their ego, giving them sort of some strength, some emotional support, sometimes even physical support. And really, this isn't a reason. They're just saying, let's take a break. But the coming to that conclusion is what processes happen to make them come to that conclusion. That's sort of what I want to explore today. And the third and final most common excuse that I see men or women make when they're breaking up with someone is they'll take a small little mistake that you did. Maybe you tell a little bit of a white lie and they blow it up and end up breaking up with you because of it. And you'll see them make statements like, let's say that you make a little white lie, you get caught in the white lie, it's very harmless, but they blow it up and they accuse you of always lying to them when they really got no grounds to do that. Well, this is a common example of them wanting to find any excuse they can get out or they can use to get out of the relationship. And I see this happen a lot of times. So again, these are kind of the precursors that you should look at to determine if your ex is really being truthful with their reasoning for breaking up with you. Because not all exes will lie to you about the reasons they break up with you, but in my experience, most exes do. So what I'd like to do right now is actually come up and show you some of the real reasons for why they'll break up with you. Now, I do want to put kind of a bit of a disclaimer here. This is not going to be an easy section to talk about. In all, there's 5 things or 5 reasons I'm going to talk to you about, and some of these are going to be very dark, definitely not socially acceptable, but I think I owe it to you to be truthful about some of the thoughts that I've had during my personal breakups, and also some of the stories that I've heard from friends and people I've worked with about why exes or why they'll break up with their significant others. So just understand you're going to need a thick skin to get through this because some of this stuff is going to be very hard hitting. So let's go with the first one. Obviously, here are going to be the real reasons for why they broke up with you. And the first one is pretty simple. They think they can do better than you. Breakups tend to be one person saying, I can do better than you, or I think I know what you have to offer, and I think I can go out there and find someone to be better than you. And there's a lot of ways that we can define what better is. And for some people, better is better looking. For others, it's a better sense of humor. And for others, it can be something as simple as, well, we didn't have enough of the same likes. We disliked too many things. We didn't connect on that one level. And it's interesting because I find that men or women who use this as the real reason for why they break up with you sometimes tend to gravitate more back towards you when they realize that no one's perfect. There's no such thing as really a perfect match. There are certain people you can find that will have more likes than dislikes, but in the end, everyone has their own imperfections, and this is sort of an immature excuse to use or an immature reason to use. Nevertheless, it is used quite commonly. In fact, I would make the argument that this particular reason, them sitting there and saying, I can do better than you, is probably without a doubt the most common reason for why someone will break up with you, right? So bear that in mind. Let's move on to the second reason. Well, the second reason is they actually associate you with disgust. Now, this is one of those dark reasons, and oftentimes I find that this is more common actually in marriages when you're with someone for an extended period of time. And probably the best example I can use related to this reason is actually a movie called About Schmidt. I believe this was a movie back in the early 2000s. It was one of Jack Nicholson's last really great movies, and the premise of the movie was really interesting. It was about a guy who is older. He was probably in his 60s or 70s, and his wife died, right? And it's interesting. It talks, it has some internal conversations. The movie has, Jack Nicholson has some internal conversations at the beginning of the movie before his wife dies, and the way he just describes his wife, he describes her with disgust, and how every time he looks at her, he can't stand the way she looks or the way she acts, and how, she always makes him sit down and pee when he wants to stand up and pee, and he's got all of these hang-ups about their relationship and everything, and he's just sort of having kind of a depressed life, and then she passes away. And he starts to realize with much regret how much all of those things that disgusted him, actually he loved very, very deeply. But I think that movie really hits the heart of this reason of why people sometimes, when they're with someone long enough, can start to get annoyed or even disgusted by certain actions that they take or certain ways that they act. So that's a really good reason, or a really good, insight into some of the reasons for why someone will break up with you. Because no one's going to want to sit there and say, because you're probably during the breakup talk sitting there and asking them, well, why? Why did you break up with me? They're not going to sit there and say, well, the way you sit disgusts me. They're not going to say that, right? Again, we have that hero complex. We don't want to look bad at ourselves. So let's move on to the third common reason I see, the third real common reason that I see among breakups, and that is you don't look like they initially thought. This is probably for the more shallow people and also probably for the younger people. People who are young, sometimes in high school, sometimes in early college, where they put more emphasis on looks than actually what someone's like on the inside, as cliche as that sounds. So I'll give you an example. A friend of mine actually went on a date with someone that he thought looked very, very beautiful. And the girl was relatively pretty, I'm not going to lie. But over time, her looks just became, lessened somewhat, and she didn't maybe do a good job of her personality. There were some deficits there, so I think there's kind of a synergy between the personality and the way someone looks, and we can obviously talk a little bit about that later. But I remember he pulled me aside, and he literally says, Chris, when I first was courting this girl, when I was trying to get her to agree to be in a relationship with me, I thought she was just the most beautiful woman I'd ever seen. But now that I've been with her for a couple of weeks, I just can't stand the way she looks. She's just below my standards. Now that's really shallow, right? But when she asked for clarification on why he's breaking up with her, he did not tell her that it's because she looked different than he thought she did. And that's really wrong on his part, but you can also see why someone's hesitant to bring that up as a reason when you're looking for clarification. So that's, like I said, I'm not sitting here and trying to hurt someone's feelings. I'm just telling you how stories from my life of what people have said to me and how people have acted. And this is a thing, and it's unfortunate, but it's a thing that we have to deal with. So that's one of the reasons. Let's move on to the next real reason, and that is, in their mind, the two of you were never in a relationship. Now, this is something relatively new and something actually I would say is really, really rare, but I see it a lot in our actual private Facebook group. You're getting, and just to preface this, everyone who's in our private Facebook group is trying to win their exes back. Most of the people are. Some people have decided to move on, and that's obviously cool and everything. But sometimes when I dive deep into their situations, I find that in their ex's mind, they were never in a relationship to begin with. They weren't at that level. And I think sometimes, even though technically speaking, there's no breakup occurring there if you were never in a relationship, but if one person believes you're in a relationship and the other doesn't, there's some serious issues there. And that's something that you definitely have to look at and take into account. and look at your own situation. I've had people come to me who say, my boyfriend broke up with me, and then when I prod them and try to ask them about their relationship with their boyfriend, they tell me that they've never even met their boyfriend in person, that everything is a long-distance relationship, kind of a cyber type relationship. And it just shocks me that they would think that they're actually in a relationship with someone when they've never physically met them. Maybe that's me. Maybe I'm a little bit old school, and maybe that's the way of the future. I don't know, but just something to consider here. And I think the final reason that I want to talk about today, the final real secret reason for why someone would break up with you, is that I actually can't stand your friends or your family. They can't stand your parents. And this is actually my own personal inclusion, because I have broken up with someone because of this exact reason. In fact, my very first girlfriend, who I had when I was, I think, 18 years old, I was in high school. And it was my first experience in a relationship, so obviously there was a lot of different aspects of the relationship that were flawed. There was a lot of insecurity on my part, a lot of insecurity on her part, but her parents were a little nutty. And when I say nutty, here I'll give you the example. So the big thing in the United States at the end of the school year, the big dance you go to is prom. Right. And I remember for prom, I asked her out for prom. She was very excited to go to the prom. I remember she got her dress. I'm very nervous. I go to pick her up at her house, and her dad answers the door with an AK-47. I'm not even kidding. An AK-47, a machine gun. And I'm already nervous enough, but when I see this, I am just like, frozen in fear. Right now, of course, he's just joking, and I suppose there's an aspect of that is quite funny looking back at it. But at the time, that struck me as odd. Why would you do that? And so there was a lot of other things that they did kind of crazily. They were very controlling of her, tried to prod into the relationship quite a bit, and ultimately I just broke up with her, and that was one of the primary reasons for why that was the case. So your friends, your family, social influences can impact the way, can impact relationship decisions, like staying in a relationship or breaking the relationship up. So keep that in mind. That's going to do it for this presentation episode YouTube video. But hey, if you haven't already, make sure you stop by our website and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. This is the probably ideal place to start if you're going through a breakup and you're wondering, like, do you have a chance? Is this worth your time? Well, if you want to know what kind of chance you have and if this is worth your time, the best place to start is to go to our website, www.exboyfriendrecovery.com, and take our Ex Recovery Chances quiz. It should only take you around 2 minutes, and you should get an idea of, okay, this is worth my time. And even if sometimes you have a low score, you can sit there and say, okay, well, what can I improve? This just means I have things to improve on. So keep that in mind. Don't dilly-dally, and I will see you guys next time. Bye-bye.